All right, good morning. It's 4:25 a.m. on 5 of March 2022. This is Corey Ecton. I'm here with today's thoughts regarding the severe weather potential, which looks like it may unfold across Iowa. Right now, you see a low pressure that is centered around Sioux City, um, with a draped cold front, also a lingering warm front in the area that is retreating off to the north and northeast. There's ongoing activity. Most of this is elevated simply because of the hour. Obviously, you get the lack of influence from the low level jet. Um, no diurnal influences at the surface, and this activity is elevated, which means it is not elevated. It's not surface based, which means any type of higher end severe potential outside of the occasional hail producers is probably not going to be very likely until can start to get some sort of diurnal influence with daytime heating. I do have a couple concerns pertaining to this situation today. As we go over and slide over here and take a look at the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for today, there's a slight risk that extends from the northern quarter of Missouri, takes up pretty much all of Iowa, southwestern Wisconsin, and extreme northwestern Illinois. There is a 5% tornado probability as delineated by the Storm Prediction Center. The Storm Prediction Center does seem to have a little bit of hesitation appears in the verbiage associated with the day one convective outlook that was issued overnight. And I share that sentiment based off what I'm seeing, but I'm also watching the convective allowing models or CAMs, and seeing how this looks like it's going to have a possibility of evolving. First and foremost, let's go ahead and start with the HER. As of right now, this does have a proper fix on what's going on right now, just some elevated activity ongoing across the majority of Iowa, nothing severe at this time. The hours that I've taken a look at that are really catching my eye are from 21Z or 3 p.m. extending into the end of the run, which would be hour 16, or would be 1Z, which would be 7 p.m. This right here is a direct association with the advancing cold front, and this is the impetus for the slight risk that is covering this area. So let's go ahead and advance forward here. And you really start to see these cells start to gain a lot of maturity. Looks like they are surface based at this point in time, and there's some pretty good activity ongoing. Heavy rains, hail, obviously flash flooding risk would be resident, considering ground saturation, as this activity here was already over this area and has already saturated the topsoil, and this is advecting north. So I'll spit it out. Don't worry. One day, flash flooding risk will be in place with these cells. It really quickly drop a quick inch and a half of rain over any given area. Right now, this time frame 22Z, which is 4 p.m. Take a look at this here and start to see these here, and these are helicity markers. So if we go in and I look at run max updraft helicity, you start to see this here. This metric is indicative, a graphical representation based off of numerical modeling that indicates rotating storms. So with this here, obviously I want to go back and scale, and you see it's not there, and now it is there, and that follows the progression of that cell that caught my eye when we were looking at the composite reflectivity off of the HER. So turn around here, and I'm going to back up and go into this in a little bit more detail. Obviously try to keep this under 10 minutes for you folks, so I'm not going to get too far into it. First and foremost, what I want to look at is the EHI, or the Energy Helicity Index, and take a look here, and we're going to back up a little bit, and it doesn't look very exaggerated. I mean, you're looking at ones and twos mostly across the area. You can hover over it and see 1.9 there, a couple 2.0s across extreme northern Missouri. So this here's a complex formula. I'll delve into it and dive into it a little bit later on and give you a little bit more intricate explanation as to what EHI does. And then we hit 2200, which is 4 p.m., and the EHI values really, really spike right here in southwestern and west central Iowa. And now this is where the concern is. Low-level jet will be starting to exert influence. The ejecting low pressure as that scoots off to the northeast, coupled with a couple other factors, but there are some limitations to this I want to discuss as well. And then we get into 5 p.m. and really start to take a look. Some of those EHI values have really ramped up, and these are a pretty good correlator to severe weather potential and looking at the 0 to 1 kilometer environment, which is obviously the most necessary recipe for storms that will produce tornadoes. I like what I see right here. So, I mean, that being said, it looks pretty good. I mean, especially for you're looking for the 5th, especially for looking at the 5th of March, that looks pretty healthy. Supercell composite parameters don't look phenomenal, but I mean they're still present. I think this is going to translate into a line of embedded supercells before it lines out completely with the maximum influences of low-level jet. Significant tornado parameter, that really starts to show some values that pique my interest. Start looking at some 3s, 3.4, probably a 3.5 crammed in there somewhere for good measure. But these values look very representative. Let's scale back and see what this does. And this is this bulk with that ejecting cell that you can look at right here. And this is that one that I highlighted before. So definitely something to watch. But as I said before a couple times, and now I'm going to say it again, let's drill down into this. Let's get into the limiting factors. First and foremost, this area right here is pretty much going to be socked in with cloud cover. Low stratus deck is expected to remain in place. That is going to hamper the air temperatures from being able to sufficiently recover to a point that I think a very big convective balance can be struck. That is going to be problematic up here. I woke up a couple hours ago, kicked around this idea of potentially playing this event, decided to not go that direction. Simply because these limiting factors going to be kind of hard to lock down, and my window of opportunity closed about an hour and a half ago for being able to leave and make this event. So I guess I'm going to slide down to Tessa in Arlington today. So that's the plan for today. But we're going to drill down into this and let's take a look. And I take a look at this here, and everything looks really good. I mean, the Hodo looks okay. I mean, it's not great. I mean, a critical angle of 30. I've seen better. I would like to see better if I'm actually going to levy a play of 9-hour drive. Now let's drill down into the metrics here, and keep in mind this here typically skew tees and sounding data is live. This is a forecast, and only one forecast based off of the HER, of course. This shows that concern that I had. 61 degree dew point is going to be pretty good for this time of the year. 65 degree air temperature, not as great as I'd like to see it. So I hedged my bets on that. Surface to 1 kilometer EHI 1.7, surface to 3 3.0. Shows me hail's probably going to be a pretty big concern with this, but tornado probability will be there, even though I don't think it's of prominence. It's still going to be present. And this is just one given point you can drill down into. Now let's advance to the 23Z hour or 5 p.m. and let's really drill down in the path of this. And this is going to be around. The locations I'm going to be looking at are in the vicinity of Des Moines and Ames, Iowa. Those are your two larger metropolitan centers in this general vicinity. I'm not highlighting communities, not saying any particular communities at risk, but definitely if you live in those communities, this would be something it's kind of worth watching. Drill down into this. Hodo looks a little bit better, a little bit sharper curvature to that. But the concern here is these capes right here have dropped off. A little bit of convective inhibition as well, and you can see this little clip right here. It almost looks like a little paper clip. That is indicative of a very subtle and growing, mind you, because I've looked through the trends with this, very subtle and growing surface-based cap. That's problematic for tornado development. Is it a 100% sure bet limiting factor? Absolutely not. But still, regardless, that being said, 9-hour drive for me, limiting factor. And then we translate into the 6 p.m. hour, and you see this is really lined out. Just as I suggested before, this was going to line out. And these cells are moving pretty good clip. I mean, they're going to be moving 45, 50 miles an hour on the heels of the denser sinking cold air behind the front, shoving the front out and really helping eject these storms off to the east and northeast at a pretty good clip. And then later on in the period, which is going to be right around dusk, 7 p.m., you really start to see this line out get its act together. A lot of this south base moisture advecting into the area is going to allow for this to convect a line of storms. Some possibly severe, it's possible. But at this stage in the game, I really feel that the tornado threat for this is tempered at this juncture, and that continues to be the trend as we advance through the end of the run into the evening, and then we get into 9 p.m. and this line is already encroaching on and crossing in some areas the Mississippi and advancing into Illinois. The cap. Let's talk about that for a second here. We got about another 5 minutes or so to go. I don't want to make these too long and exaggerated, but let's really drill down into this. We're going to advance back to the hours that I was watching before, and I really want to take a look at surface-based SIN, or convective inhibition, if you will. And this here is augmented. This is the boundary, so not really anything to pay attention to. And these little areas here, even though this cap looks very, very weak, considering the cloud cover that's going to be in place at the surface, even though these are representing lesser values, these are a big limiting factor. And I found that with these early season setups, March, you get into some February events do it. These little itty bitty pockets of convective inhibition can go a long way towards really squelching severe weather development. So we proceed through the run, and boom, wow, we're really starting to see a lot of convective inhibition. This is resultant. Most of it's resultant from ongoing convection, storms in the area and the such. But still, seeing that as one of those things that you kind of look at and go, 9-hour drive, do I really want to be up against that? Gas prices being as ridiculous as they are, probably not. And then that really starts to kick in, and this is out on, and some of this is under convection, and some of this is out in front of the convection at this stage of the game, and that's pretty much going to force any of these ongoing storms to go elevated. They lose tornado potential at that stage of the game due to having a pocket of stable air at the surface, and that's a big problem. The other thing I wanted to discuss, and we're going to drill down into this. I'm going to back up to the hour I was watching. Let's go into the NAM 3K. This has definitely, in my personal opinion, been the more reliable model over the long term. And we're going to drill down into the surface. We're going to go back into composite reflectivity. And the 3K NAM is really demonstrating a tendency to be conservative with respect to this event. And that right there is a good reason to kind of hedge a bit on this and not go, at least for me. Now, if I lived inside a 3 or 4 hour radius of this area, I'd probably be there. But given this, and this here actually retards development back to the west, it's not as aggressive with the central Iowa play. Go into hour 23. See a couple cells here. We're going to drill down. We're going to do a forecast sounding point here. Always look in front of you're always going to want to look in front of the storm. Number one, you avoid, if you decide you want to look at this on your own, and I don't recommend basing a forecast off of it, leave it to experts. But if you decide that you want to do this, you always want to look at the environment out in front of the cell. You don't want to look under the cell because you get contamination, because the model's trying to factor for ongoing convection, and then that becomes a problem as far as the model's being able to really resolve what's going on atmospherically. So looking out in front of it, now there's people that have asked, hey, why are you looking out in front of the cell? I'm in its path. I want to see what the air mass looks like prior to the storm getting there and really messing up the atmosphere. And we go back to this and take a look, and this HODO does not look particularly impressive. Critical angle does look better in my personal opinion, but I mean, the velocities associated with it aren't great. I think that's a primary limiting factor to the tornadic potential associated with this. And then we look at these two metrics, and these are the ones that really caught my eye. First and foremost, right down here at the surface, this is a wind out of about 170, out of about 190, 195 degrees. So this is south-southwesterly. Really kind of doesn't help matters a lot unless you can really get those winds to come out of less than 180 degrees or out of the southeast, south-southeast, or whatnot. That really helps get those updrafts rotating really, really good, helps them tighten up with not really needing a lot of organizational time, and really can kind of help kick things off quickly. Also, in here, right in this area, at about 700 millibars, I start to see just a little bit, but it's present, a little bit of veer back veer, or VBV. That is a big, big problem as far as getting those updrafts to really get into the core of the storm and sustain. And that's one of the things that I do see. Like I said, it's not very prominent. I've definitely seen a lot worse with this, but it's present here. The other thing, and this is the biggest thing I wanted to discuss, is this air temperature and this dew point temperature. They don't look great. The lifted condensation level, or LCL value, looks really good. You want that nice and close to the surface, but also equally as close to the surface, you want this LFC, or this level of free convection. And this is really, really up there. I mean, 850 is at about 4,400 feet. You're dealing with this here. This is at about 7,000, 7,500 feet, so you're looking about a mile and a half up. That's problematic for really being able to get those, to get that column of rotating air to be able to descend and come into contact with the ground. So, I mean, that being said, go ahead and wrap this up. I just want to touch on this real quickly, and this is one of the things that, please put some comments in here. Give that thumbs up, ring that bell for notifications. I plan on doing this pretty regularly. I just want to see what you all think about this, if this is something that's a tool that you could utilize, if this is something that's going to help as we progress through the severe weather season, and even if there's not severe weather ongoing, if you want me to just dive in and cover these, it'd be good to know, because let's try to go a different direction with this, considering the Facebook fallacies and all the such. But as of right now, in a nutshell, if you're in Iowa and have interests in Iowa and seeing that slight risk and probably hearing it in local media and all the such, take it with a grain of salt. Sure, I mean, in Iowa, will there be a tornado or two today? Probably. I think they're going to be of the weaker variety, and I definitely think there's not going to be anything that's long-lasting or sustaining, nothing long-track, nothing particularly violent, but it only takes one in the right place at the right time, even of weak magnitude, to really cause some headaches. So this might be worth kind of keeping an eye on. But for the time being, that about wraps it up for the day. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please put them in the comments below and let me know what you think. All right? Thank you. Hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk soon.